My upbringing was tough. My dad wasn't around. My mum tried, but she had her own issues. People would come in and out of our flat who weren't nice to her. Sometimes they weren't very nice to me. When I was a teenager, social services moved us in with a foster family, but they were really strict. I hated it. I left. That night was the first night I spent on the streets. After a few nights, an outreach team found us and got us a place in a local hostel. There were about 30 other people staying there, most of them a lot older than me. I met a bloke who said he'd look out for us. We'd smoke weed together round the back. Then one night he offered us heroin. I couldn't find a reason to say no. The next 5 years I saw a bit of a blur. I was in and out of hostels, begging, shoplifting to fund me drug use. I did a couple of short stretches in prison, but when I came out I was always back on the same grind. I had a few boyfriends with short tempers and heavy fists. Then I got pregnant. I really tried to kick me habits for me little girl, but then my best friend died of an overdose and I just couldn't handle it. I started using again in secret. My baby was healthy, but she was taken off us not long after she was born. After that I spiralled. I felt like I had this hole inside of us which could never be filled. I stayed on the streets and I'd avoid looking at reflections in cars and shop windows. I didn't want to see myself anymore. Then one day this woman called Julie came along with one of the outreach teams. I remember she had this big smile and smelled like pine trees. She started telling us about a thing called housing first, saying I could get my own flat. I remember thinking she was having us on. Julie came back the next week with Charlie, who I'd shared hostels with. Charlie said about how she'd had her own flat for over a year, and she looked different. She put on weight and her skin looked great. Julie asked if I would come down to the office the next day, and I just thought, why not? Julie talked us through how Housing First works. She explains how my home wasn't conditional on anything and they would support us for as long as I wanted. I remember laughing, it sounded too good to be true. Julie said we could work together to find us a flat. By the end of the session, my laughter had turned to tears. A week later, we met with a housing officer called Dave, who said he could take us to view a property that afternoon. I was amazed. The flat was nice enough, but it was on the very top floor and I really don't like heights. I was so nervous about telling Julie, but she just nodded and said, let's find somewhere else. I went back to see Dave. He was a bit gruff-like about us rejecting the flat, saying I needed to reduce my expectations. I thought I'd messed it all up. But Julie said she'd speak to him and be in touch. A few days later she called us and said I had a new appointment booked. On the Monday, Dave took me to see option number 2. It was on the ground floor with a little garden. I loved it. I signed the paperwork and Julie set up all my benefits as well, and she helped us get some furniture. I felt a bit odd in the house at first, but Julie came round every day and I'd make her a cuppa, milk 2 sugars, and after a while I started to feel more settled. But then one night, an ex who'd just got out of jail banged on my door and demanded to stay. I was too scared to say no. I rang Julie and told her I didn't want her coming round anymore, so she wouldn't find out. One afternoon, I came home and 3 people were passed out in my living room, and all the money in my change jar was gone. When I got annoyed with him, he got violent, and I ended up in hospital. I started sleeping on the streets again. One morning someone tapped us on the shoulder. I could smell the pine trees. I knew it was Julie. When I told her what had happened, she said they could look to find us another property in a different neighbourhood, no problem. Dave found this place on the other side of town. It didn't have a garden, but it had a nice balcony. After a couple of months, Julie sat us down and asked us what my goals were. No one had ever asked us that before. I wanted to start using drugs less, make new friends and have the chance to reconnect with my daughter. I was still using a bit, so Julie would bring fresh needles and make sure I had a naloxone pack in the house. Then she helped us to sign up with a local drug service in a community art class, because I said I'd like painting at school. I've met all sorts of people there. After about a year, one of my paintings was put up in a local exhibition. Seeing my name up there for something good. Didn't think I'd ever see that. It's been 4 years now. Julie still checks in on us every couple of weeks. I made a card for my daughter in art class, which Julie's agreed to try and send to her. I don't know what'll come of it, but it's a start. Recently, I've been thinking about Charlie, who spoke to us when I was sleeping rough. Without the reassurance of someone who'd lived through it, I don't think I would have ever believed housing first was real. I've got my first session as a peer mentor next week. I'm nervous, but it feels good to be the one given the support for a change. I've got a new full-length mirror for me flat. I'm not scared of my reflection anymore.